Hi, I'm Steve. Today we're going to take a look at part 2 of my review and further dive into the Sony PVM 2950. Now my 2950 is a 2950Q, but if you have a similar model number, as long as it's 2950, then these techniques will work even if there's another letter after the number there. So today we're going to go ahead and get in the sub menu for this. I've got a special remote that will let me do that. That way we can adjust the pin cushion settings and all the other settings. I'm going to show you the tools that I use to calibrate. We'll go ahead and calibrate this screen and talk about it along the way. First, if you're new to the channel, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the bell notification. I come out with content covering retro technologies quite often. And if you are a returning subscriber, thank you for continuing to watch these videos. And please let me know what you think of this video with a comment below or a thumbs up. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and take a look at what equipment we need to get this job done.
The first tool I'll be using to calibrate is my Super Nintendo. This is my Super Nintendo Junior, and it has been RGB modded. I will be using my SD to SNES. I've got my calibration software loaded on my SD card, and it works perfectly through this console. Now I will be using RGB, but you must know for this monitor it does require C-Sync. No other type of sync will work with it for RGB. And there's also a specific way that the RGB adapter needs to be plugged in. You can see there's actually two sync lines on this monitor, but the bottom line will not sync up with RGB. But as long as it's connected like this, it'll work fine. Let's take a look at the remote I'm going to use today. Again, this is not the remote from this monitor. I don't actually have that remote. But I do have a Sony CRT TV remote from the 90s. This is the model number RMY137A. And if we look up here, these are the buttons that I need to use today. I need to make sure have a TV button, a power button. We got to use the display button on here. We'll need all these number buttons to scroll through our settings. And then if we look down here, we'll need the volume. We'll need a muting button to record our changes. And we'll also need to use this enter button today.
So let's go ahead and get started now on the calibration. The first thing we want to do is get power going to our PVM. And this thing will just power right up. Now I need to get it into standby mode first to be able to access the service menu. And to do that, I have to have it turned on with the power button. And then I push the power button on the remote and it turns itself off, and you'll notice right under the power button a little red standby light lights up. So that's when we're in standby mode and we've got it ready to go. Now I'm going to use the remote to put in the key code combination to make sure I can get into the sub menu. Let's go ahead and try that out and see if we can get it to work just right off the bat. What you need to do is make sure you press first the TV button, and then in order we're going to go display, the number 5, volume up, and then power. And hopefully if we do that correctly, we should see our sub menu pop up here on the screen. And it did. You see that? This is our sub menu. This is our geo destination, convergence, white balance, chroma. So now we're going to go ahead and start going through this menu. I'm going to set the camera up on a different angle, and I'll show you as I navigate through these menu items what we can actually do and what we can change. I'm going to walk you through this, and to first move up and down on our screen, we're going to use the the number 1 to go up, and then the number 4 to go down. So that's how we do select through the menu right there. And I don't want to reset it. But if I hit enter twice, then it puts me in the geometry settings. So that's the enter button right under the numbers. And again, it should let me go up and down with this. Number 1 and number 4. And you can see we've got vertical linearity, more pin amp settings, tilt, lower pin amp, vertical angle, vertical bow, and everything we pretty much need in these 17 settings to get our calibration done.
Let's get started working on this calibration. Now first, to scroll through the settings, you will need the remote again, and the numbers 1 and 4 allow you to change what you are adjusting. So if I press 1, I go up, and 4, I go down, and it lets me change between vertical, centerness, into the next setting. And then to change the values on the settings, I need to use the numbers 3 and 6. So when I use those numbers, you can see my values change. I wanted to show this horizontal trapezoid setting too. This is almost like a horizontal linearity setting. It's quite odd. It's not on a lot of monitors that I've encountered, but for this one you can see when I scroll through it what it kind of does, and it's good to get that nice and centered up. And I'm going to skip over vertical linearity for right now, but you can see that's obviously a setting we'll be working on today. Some of these settings are for screen brightness, but first I just want to get my screen slightly smaller than my display picture. That way I can see all the corners and sides along the grid here, and then I'll be able to make my adjustments as I go. This monitor does have screen tilt control, so as I go up on that value you can see the screen tilt towards me or away from me. And then we've got pin amp controls to make sure our corners are either not globe shaped like this or expanded out too far. And that pin amp is going to adjust the entire screen. Here's a little bit more on the tilt control. And as we continue to work through these, we'll have upper pin cushion settings where we can do the same adjustments for upper and lower pins that we were doing on the entire pin amp. So if one side looks like either the top or bottom looks like it needs a little bit more of adjustment, you can use this to adjust just the top and just the bottom, the lower and upper pin cushion settings. We've also got controls for our angle and our bow on our picture. So if I change the angle setting by going up and down, you can see the screen actually tilts on its axis, and then the bow setting shows how you can straighten out your sides. If your screen happens to be bowing a certain direction, then you can adjust that to straighten it back out. And that's the majority of our settings that we're going to be working with our grid today. We're going to go through some other settings on here. We'll be working through some vertical linearity, but for now I wanted to show you how a lot of these settings work, because you'll need to probably adjust them the first time you get your monitor. To properly adjust our linearity, we're going to need a backdrop that has circles in it. And I've got this circle calibration screen. As you see, I go up on the linearity settings and it turns those circles to ovals. So what I want to do is make sure I've got this set where it just looks round as possible, all 5 of these circles. Then I want to write my data after doing all that, and to do that I need to hit muting a couple times and it'll tell me that it's writing, and then make sure you get that written in there. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some gameplay after I've got this screen all calibrated up. First off, we've got the not so great version of the Terminator game, but really any 8-bit, 16 or 32-bit game looks fantastic on this monitor now. So let's just go ahead and take a look at some of this action. Alright, so enough of that game, and now let's move on to something else. How about a little RoboCop action? Well, this game is interesting, but I can't say I like the mechanics of it too much. It's really slow, and I don't know how in the world you dodge a lot of these shots or bullets, but anyway, that's going to pretty much do it for this calibration video. I hope you learned how to calibrate this monitor if you happen to have one, but I also want to let you know that these techniques do work on the Sony CRT KV series that was released in the 90s. This exact same technique works for those TVs. Those are consumer sets, so you can use the same sub-menu on those TVs to make adjustments. Anyway, I'm Steve. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please let me know what you think. Also, if you have any questions, leave me a comment. I'll be glad to try to help you out. And thanks again for supporting RetroTech.